Hi guys, and in today's video I'm going to show you all the different item combinations for Force gear. Hi guys, and welcome back to another video for PSO Blueburst. In today's video I'm going to continue the series of guides that I've been doing for all the different item combinations in PSO. So we've already covered all of the different hunter item combinations and the ones that affect ranges as well. So today we're going to look at the Force combinations. So just to recap, PSO has this system where you can combine certain items together to make new items. This can either be, for example, a weapon and a specific combination item, or sometimes you can combine two weapons together to make another weapon. It also does apply to some armors and shields as well, which we'll go on to probably in the next video. So for today's video, we're going to focus on all the different Force weapons that you can make. Now, there's not as many of these as there is, for example, the ranger weapons, but there is still a reasonable amount of them. So we'll go through them all, I'll showcase them, and I'll let you know if any of them are actually worth making as well. So the first one that we're going to look at is a cane called the Summit Moon. So Summit Moon is an 11-star cane. It's a really popular weapon for using particularly on 4 new worlds. The reason for that is because it actually boosts the effectiveness of your simple techniques, which is Foi, Zonde, and Barter. So because of that, because 4 new world already has that boost, it just adds on to it because they do stack. However, it is also a really good cane for other forces for specific situations. The main thing you're going to use this for is probably for certain bosses, so it's quite a common weapon to use on the last form of Dark Faults because he only has one target. Now, any boss that basically only has one target, Summit Moon is generally going to be pretty good to use on. So the way that you make a Summit Moon is, first thing you want to get is you want to get any type of normal cane. So any regular cane, it can be, for example, a cane, a club, anything like that. The only restriction is it has to be at maximum grind. So for us, we've got a club plus 10 here. And you have to be above a certain level to be able to do it with I think, at least 650 mental strength as well. The level it needs to be depends on what type of cane you're using. So in this instance, we're using a club, which is the highest cane. So for this, we actually need to be level 130 or higher to be able to create it. But if you're using a basic cane, you could do this at level 100. The only downside is you would have to grind the cane up to 55 instead. So it's kind of a toss-up which way you want to go with this. You can either use a lower-end cane, be able to make it earlier, but have to grind it a lot higher and use a lot more grinders. Or you can use a higher cane, not grind it anywhere near as much, but you have to be a higher level to do it. So once you've got your cane, you equip it, and you see it is just a regular club. And then you want to use an item called Magic Rock Moolah. Now this drops on quite a few different section IDs. It's not a particularly hard item to get, and there are some very easy drops for it, so it's not a particularly hard weapon to get this. Once you've got the club equipped, and you've got a Magic Rock Moolah, the only other consideration that you need to make sure is make sure that your character isn't wearing a spirit garment. Because spirit garment also, as I'll cover in one of the next videos, that also has an interaction with Magic Rock Moolah, and it won't let you do the combination if you've got that equipped as well, because the game won't know which combination you want to do. So if you've got a spirit garment equipped, just make sure that's not equipped before you do this. But once that's all sorted, all you do is equip the club or whatever type of cane it is you're using, and then use Magic Rock Moolah. You'll get the combination sound, and you can see now we've got a Summit Moon. So Summit Moon is a really decent cane. As I said, boosts your simple text by 30%. Now, there are canes that boost them by more. So the really common rare canes, which are Club of Laconium, Mace of Adamant, and Club of Zumuran, they actually boost by 40% for their respective simple tech. But the downside is that Club of Laconium, for example, only boosts Foi by 40%. Mace of Adamant only boosts Barter by 40%. So it's essentially, do you want to use 3 inventory slots to carry all 3 of those canes for a 10% more boost? Or do you want to just condense those onto one weapon or have a 30% boost instead? Typically, I generally find that I just tend to use a Summit Moon instead. But it's up to you which way you want to go with it. So what I'll do is I'll cast with another weapon first, just so you can get an idea of our kind of base damage with attack. We're going to use Barter on this Del Saber. And you can see we do 282. If I switch to Summit Moon, do 374, so it's a big boost. I mean, the boosts for different techniques in the game are really noticeable. So generally with Force, you are going to be wanting to use items that do boost techniques. So Summit Moon is a fantastic weapon, but it is quite situational. That's Summit Moon. So the next ones we're going to look at is there are 2 different items that react to the same combination item. And the combination item is an item called Magic Water. Now, I believe Magic Water is one of the items that you get from Paganini's Fort and Drop Shop in Gallon Shop. Now, there are two weapons that react to it, which are these two here, the Plantain Leaf and the Fatsia. So if we go with Fatsia first, Fatsia, it's basically just a plant. If you use a Magic Water on this, it will actually change into another weapon. So if you have Fatsia equipped, and you go to your inventory, and you want to use an item called Magic Water, once you use it, it will transform the Fatsia into a weapon called Plantain Huge Fan. Now this is a very, very strange weapon, so first of all, you might notice that its icon has changed to a melee icon, and that's because this is actually a partisan. This is Plantain Huge Fan. So this is an extremely strange weapon. So there are a few very strange things about this weapon. So first of all, it's usable by Humar, Hugh Newworld, and any force. Secondly, it uses a mental strength requirement, so although it is a partisan, forces can use it quite easily because of the mental strength requirement. So the way this weapon works is the special attack hits for very little damage, honestly, but it pierces through enemies. Now, a lot of the piercing special attacks in the game tend to sacrifice HP to do it. This doesn't, but the downside is that it doesn't do much damage. Honestly, I don't really see a great deal of use for this. I guess it's good for opening boxes, potentially. This weapon does seem to have slightly bigger range than an all partisan as well. It's a very, very strange weapon to use. I'll try and show you. So if I can line these up properly, you can see that it is piercing through and hitting multiple enemies. Full metal accuracy doesn't help here because I do miss a lot. So that is Plantain Huge Fan. It's a very, very weird weapon. Is it worth making? I mean, if you've got a Fatsia and a Magic Water, sure. I don't really know if it is worth making overall. Maybe you'd get more use out of it on a Hugh Newworld, possibly, with the increased attack power, but I'm honestly not sure. The special attack in particular just doesn't seem that useful to me, honestly. But I suppose it is a partisan with extended range that could be useful in some situations. So that is Plantain Huge Fan. However, I did mention that there are two weapons that are affected by Magic Water. So the other one that's affected is Plantain Leaf. So again, it's another weapon. Again, it's another leaf. And just like the Fatsia, if we use another Magic Water, this will transform into the confusingly named Plantain Fan. So we have Plantain Fan and Plantain Huge Fan, which are two totally different weapons. So Plantain Fan is this one here. It basically looks like a scaled down version of Plantain Huge Fan, which makes sense. So Plantain Fan works very similar to Plantain Huge Fan. So its special attack, again, has this wind attack that pierces. The difference with this one is it actually does hard attack damage. However, this is hard attack with a 1 that we're talking. So again, it's not particularly useful, honestly. So, is this worth using? I personally don't really feel like it is. It doesn't really give you any boosty techniques or anything. It is mainly for that special attack, and honestly, I don't really feel the special attack is worth it. It's quite a unique weapon, I guess, but generally, I don't think many people use it because it's just ultimately not that useful overall. So next up, we have the Branch of Paku. This is a weapon that's pretty easy to get. Some IDs get it in very hard. It's really not that good. It's a pretty terrible weapon, honestly. However, if you use Chow Mag on this, it will actually turn into another weapon. So with this weapon, if you get a Branch of Paku and you have a Chow Mag, you can use the Chow Mag and it will transform this. Now, there are actually two ways of making this weapon, and the way you want to do it depends on what you want from the finished weapon. So the weapon it turns into is a weapon called Striker of Chow. So I'll show you that now. So if you use a Chow Mag on it, it turns the Branch of Paku into a Striker of Chow, which is a really cute weapon. Striker of Chow is actually a fantastic weapon because it boosts your shifter and D-band range. So for any forces that don't have double shifter and D-band range, this is a fantastic weapon for doubling that range. I believe the boost also does stack if you already have a boost, so then it will double it even more, as far as I'm aware. But for forces that don't have that extended shifter and D-band range, this is a really good weapon for keeping your team buffed. Now, personally, I wouldn't recommend using a Chow mag to make it, because there is another way to actually make this weapon. So if you go in the quest Towards the Future in episode 1 with a bunch of Paku Paku, when the quest starts, if you run into the medical center on Pioneer 2, if you've got a bunch of Paku Paku equipped, or it might just have to be in your inventory, there'll be a hidden warp in the medical center. Go through it and it'll take you to ruins. And then all you need to do is just stand under the waterfall in the ruins room that it takes you to. And once you've stood there for a while, a Chow will appear and just attach itself to the branch of Paku Paku, and it'll turn it into a striker of Chow for free. The only benefit of doing it with the Chow mag is that if you have a branch of Paku Paku with good attributes, you can use the Chow mag and it will retain the attributes. So I can't remember if I made this one with hit or not. Yes, you can see this one, I made a branch of Paku Paku with 50% hit, and I've made a striker of Chow, which also has 50% hit, and that's because we've used the Chow mag. If you use the method with Towards the Future, the striker of Chow that you get will have all zeros. However, it is a free way of making it, and realistically, you're not going to melee with a rod anywhere. So for me, you may as well just make it through the Towards the Future method. It just seems like a massive waste of a mag to use a mag on this. But there is those two different ways of making it, just so you are aware. So you can either use a Chow mag on a branch of Paku Paku, or do the Towards the Future method by standing under the waterfall. I would personally recommend doing the waterfall method instead. But this is a fantastic weapon. So if I equip another weapon and cast Shifter, I'll do it in here so you can see. If I cast Shifter, you can see the effect around us. If I then do a striker of Chow and do it, you can see it has actually a noticeably different effect that it's boosted. And the same for D-Band as well. So it's just a fantastic support weapon for buffing your team. So next up we have, and there's two weapons that you can make from common wands. So again, for these ones you need a fully ground common wand of any type. As long as it's fully ground, that's the only requirement. And you have to be above a certain mental strength requirement as well. Now for this first one, you want to be using an item called the Star Amplifier. So Star Amplifier is a drop from certain areas. And if you use a Star Amplifier on a maximum grind wand, so for this one we have just a Scepter plus 10, which is the highest end wand. Again, any common wand will work, it just has to be at maximum grind. If you then use a Star Amplifier on it, it will turn it into a Twinkle Star. The Twinkle Star is a wand that boosts your simple text, so much like the Summit Moon. However, it only boosts your simple text by 20%, whereas Summit Moon boosts by 30%. And because of that, Twinkle Star is often passed up in favour of Summit Moon. And I kind of totally get why. I just, personally, I don't really see a reason for using Twinkle Star, honestly. My view on this is that if you're wanting to boost your simple text, you're going to either use the common rare canes like Club of Laconium, or you're going to use Summit Moon. It just doesn't seem worth it using Twinkle Star. I mean, I guess if you find a Star Amplifier, it's an easier way of making a boost weapon. And it still does boost all three as well, so it's not as if it's a bad weapon by any means. It's just that it's outclassed by Summit Moon. So that is Twinkle Star. The other one you can make, and again, we do this again from a max grind common wand, is if you use an item called Magic Rock Heart Key. So this you only get from Paganini's Photon Drop Shop in Galan Shop. And again, on a max grind wand, if you use it, it will turn your wand into a magical piece. So magical piece, on the other hand, is very worth making. So magical piece boosts your mid-level technique, so it boosts Giffoi, Gizonda, and Gabata, and the boost is 30%, which is quite a decent boost. Because it boosts all three, 30%, it's actually one of the best weapons, if not the best, boosting the Giffoi, Gizonda, and Gabata. And as you might know, Giffoi and Gizonde in particular are extremely useful techniques. Gabata much less so, but Giffoi and Gizonde are some of the techs you'll use the most. So having a weapon that boosts both of those by a decent amount is really, really important. So a magical piece is a really, really good weapon. So really, really worth making. I would definitely prioritize this over a Twinkle Star. Twinkle Star to me just isn't worth honestly isn't worth the investment making it. Whereas magical piece does seem worth it. So the next one is a rod combination. So in the previous Hunter and Ranger videos, we showed 2 different combinations that were made from an item called Parasitic Gene Flow. So for the hunters, we had the Dark Flow Sword, and for rangers, we had the Dark Meteor Shot. Now, I did mention in the range video, there is also a third combination you can make, which is for forces. So this weapon, for this one, you want to have a common rod at maximum grind. So for this one, we have a striker plus 20, which is the best rod you can get. Again, it's max grind, depends on what one you're using. So if you're using a regular rod, it's going to be a much higher grind. And the level requirement does depend on what rod you're using. You also need to have at least, I believe it's at least 900 mental strength for this as well. Once you've got that, and you've got it equipped, you use an item called Parasitic Gene Flow. This drops from Olga Flow on certain section IDs. It's very, very rare. If you then use Parasitic Gene Flow, what it will do is it will turn your rod into a Dark Bridge. The Dark Bridge, first of all, probably one of the coolest looking weapons in the game because it actually moves, it's actually alive. So this is a very, very interesting weapon. So, first of all, this weapon, it has a few downsides. We need to cover those first. So the downsides are it will randomly confuse, paralyze, or freeze you, which is terrible. Now, generally, Cure Freeze, you'll quite often use one of those at high level anyway because freeze is really annoying. But essentially, if you want to be safe from this, you have to carry either a Cure Paralysis, Cure Freeze, and Cure Confuse, or you need to use like a Sacred Cloth Armor to dodge the Paralysis along with a Cure Freeze, and it's just a lot of hassle to deal with. So that's one big downside of this. There are a few benefits to Dark Bridge though. So the first one is it boosts your damage of grants by 20%. It also allows your Megad to pierce as well. Now obviously for Fornuel that's not going to do anything because Fornuel already has piercing Megad. So if you're a Fornuel, you're only going to get the benefit on the grants. The other thing is it has a very similar ability to the Psycho Wand. So the Psycho Wand has this ability where your text will cost 50% TP, but it'll take the full TP cost off your HP. This actually has a slightly better version of that, which is text will cost 50% TP, like the Psycho Wand, but it will only take 50% of the cost off your HP. I suppose the downside is that you are balancing that with a rod that will randomly confuse, freeze, or paralyze you. So there is upsides and downsides to both. The big downside with Dark Bridge, though, apart from it randomly statusing you, is that it doesn't give you any boost to your other text, so it only boosts Grants and Megad. Whereas Psycho Wand obviously has big boosts to Rafoy, Razonda, and Rabada, so generally Psycho Wand is considered just a better option. But the other reason that Dark Bridge tends to get avoided is because there are other weapons that kind of do the job better. So we've already mentioned that for like Ratek boosts, you're going to use something like a Psycho Wand instead. For grants, it's actually outclassed by the Mercurius Rod, which isn't too hard to get. For the Piercing Megad, you can get out through other gear as well. So Demonic Fork allows you to have Piercing Megad. Some armors allow you to as well, like the Dirty Life Jacket or the Curse Cloak. So there are other options of getting the boost that Dark Bridge gives you, or getting better boosts than it gives you. So generally, it's just honestly not really that worth using, but it is still a really cool weapon. Honestly, of the three, it's probably my favourite looking of the three. I really love the way it looks and how it moves around and rides around. But objectively, though, it probably is worth just making a Dark Float, honestly, because it is by far the best of the three weapons. So this is a weapon called Hitogata, and it's basically like a little human-shaped doll. It's a card weapon. So if I just equip normal attack, you see it's just a regular card. Just works like any other card, really. However, if you grind this to its maximum, which is 9, and then you want to find an item called Book of Hitogata. So Book of Hitogata is a very, very rare item. The drop rates for it are horrendously bad. However, you can also get this through Black Pepper's Dangerous Deal as well. If you equip the Hitogata plus 9, and then use Book of Hitogata, this will turn into a weapon called Dancing Hitogata, and this is probably one of the strangest weapons in the entire game. So Dancing Hitogata, at first glance, looks exactly the same. However, after a few seconds, you'll notice that one of the little Hitogata will start floating around you. And if we leave it a bit longer, a second one starts floating around you. And a third. and a fourth, and a fifth. And this is where it gets to its maximum. And these will just continue to float around you. They won't disappear, and it won't make any more than 5. Now, the way that this weapon is very weird is because it doesn't act like a normal card. So if I go and attack with this, you'll see exactly what I mean. So you can't really aim Dancing Hitogata. Basically, the way that Dancing Hitogata works is when you hit the attack button, the dolls will just fire off in whatever direction they're facing. So as you can see, they kind of orbit around you. And whenever you attack with them, they'll just fly off in that direction. So it makes it almost impossible to aim. So we'll try that again. So we'll try and hit this guy in front of us. We actually managed to hit that guy there. The other thing is it does fire all of the Hitogata off at the same time as well. So once you've done one attack, you basically are down to just throwing one doll until the others regenerate again. Honestly, it's a pretty terrible weapon. There are very, very limited situations you can get good mileage out of it. So for example, on a stationary target like the dragon when it's downed, potentially when it gets back up, if you can line it up, you might be able to clip all of it. So if you stand underneath the dragon, you might be able to hit all of the dragon with each Hitogata. But it's so situational. Realistically, you're probably not going to use it very often. It's honestly, it's more just used for just showing off a bit because of how rare it is normally. Particularly in the older versions of the games before Blue Burst. In Blue Burst, less so because you can get the Book of Hitogata pretty easily. So that is Dancing Hitogata. It is definitely one of the strangest weapons in the game. Again, I'll try and show you that again just so you can see. But if you haven't guessed by now, no, it's not really worth using. So we hit one of those enemies there. It's near impossible to use effectively. So that is Dancing Hitogata. It's a really funny weapon. I really like that it's so unique and it's just such a strange weapon to use. But realistically, it's just not one you're going to use very often. It's so situational and so hard to use effectively that you're probably not going to use it much. So that is actually the end of all of the force weapon combinations. So that there really aren't as many as Hunter or Ranger. Now, out of those, which ones are worth using? So I would say out of all of them, Summit Moon is very, very good for situational use. So for bosses with one target or any enemy with high HP that spawn solo, it's really, really useful for that. It's quite good on Phone New World as well, just for accentuating their boost to simple text. But it is quite a situational weapon overall. But it is honestly still worth making. I wouldn't really bother with either of the Plantain fans. I just feel these are more just not comedy weapons as such, but they're just there to be different. To me, these don't really have much practical use. You could maybe use Plantain Huge Fan on a Hunter and get a bit more mileage out of it, with it being a partisan, but generally I don't really feel like they're that worth using. Striker of Chow is fantastic for the double shifter and D-band range, so this is probably worth making as well. But again, I would do it through the Towards the Future method rather than wasting a Chow mag on it. I probably wouldn't bother with Twinkle Star, just because it is generally outclassed by Summit Moon, and it just doesn't really seem worth using over it. Magical Piece is fantastic, so this is definitely worth using because the boost to the mid-level text is really, really good. And it's one of the best ones that boosts all 3. Dark Bridge, as cool as it is, I generally don't feel it's worth making. I think if you get a Parasitic Gene Flow, the best use out of it is probably just to make a Dark Flow sword. And as we covered, Dancing Hitogata is a complete waste of time, but is quite funny to use in very odd specific situations. So overall, there is a few that are worth using. Definitely go with the Summit Moon, definitely go with the Magical Piece. The rest of them, you can play around with them if you want to, but generally they're a bit more limited use or just kind of useless in general. So those are all the combinations for Force. We will do one more of these videos which will cover all of the armor combinations, because there are quite a few of those as well. So that will probably be next week. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed the video, please consider liking, subscribing, or joining as a member. We do 2 videos a week. Normally we do at least 1 video for the older games, and then the other video we alternate between NGS or some of the Phantasy Star content. I also stream once a week on Sundays, which usually is one of the older Phantasy Star games like PSO. And you can also follow me on X at Section Skylight as well. You can also join us on the Discord, where we've got a little active community. So feel free to come and join us over there. And I'll see you guys in the next video.